Ooh. These wise guys are back. I'm Uncle Henry Hill, and that's my good mate, Logan Myers. And we are back tonight to review the movie that we have been anticipating since it was announced. We're talking about the Sopranos story, The Many Saints of Newark. Finally here, man. We're excited. You're the one who got me into the Sopranos in the first place. So obviously, you know, I was super excited for this. We always, every Sunday, towards the end of the Sopranos run, we'd always meet up, watch the newest episode on Sunday and talk about it that whole week and just love the show. And we're looking forward to this ever since it was announced. And obviously it's going to follow Dickie Moltisanti, Christopher's dad, and follow Tony as he was growing up and becoming influenced by this man.
Whoa!
Forget about it.
Stunad. Yeah, we've been fans since the show was actually on HBO. What a time to be alive in 2021, having a Sopranos movie. It's something I thought we would never be talking about. But this is more of a prequel, and we get to dive into Dickie Moltisanti's character. As we know from the TV show, we heard of him through Tony, but this is actually seeing the character and everything he was about in the 1960s with young Anthony growing up and trying to guide him in the right direction. And trying is the key word here, because it doesn't work out that way.
It never does when David Chase is involved in the writing. He never likes to go one way. He'll go off in tangents. Everything will be its own thing and it'll be unique. And this movie's no different. It tells the story of Dickie Moltisanti when he was a young man growing up there with his father, Hollywood Dick, played by the one, the only Henry Hill, obviously from Goodfellas, Ray Liotta. He's back in this. And it was very cool to see him in a role where he's at the age where he's one of the older guys, the older mafioso. Obviously, he's the classic character from Goodfellas, very young at the time, you know, obviously playing a 20-some-year-older. Obviously, he was in his 30s, but still, he was a young man back then. And to see him come around into this one as Dickie's dad was very cool to see. And this movie brings in a lot of actors that were really having to fill big shoes from the series. Everybody, you know, we had to see Paulie, we had to see Uncle Junior. We have all these characters that we already know. So in order to get this movie right, they were going to have to cast it perfectly. And outside of a few minor complaints where they could have improved, I thought they did an excellent job in casting. The casting is what made this movie. The thing that really made this movie and made it something that everybody was going to look forward to and that you had to do was cast Michael Gandolfini in his dad's role of young Tony.
Yeah, and he really knocked it out of the park in this performance. I'm not familiar with his work. I know he's been in a few other TV shows and things like that, another movie, but I'm not really familiar with his work. And I thought he looked and played the part perfectly. You know, the mannerisms were there, you know, seeing a young Tony at that age, you know, trying to be a varsity athlete that they say in the TV show. And then
you'll never have the makings of a varsity athlete.
Varsity athlete. They brought that up, but yeah, he's, you know, trying to be a football player, go to college, but he's getting his uncle that's a wild man, and that's a ticking time bomb essentially, is Dickie. You don't know what's going to happen with this guy's loose cannon, and him being around that, you know, corrupts young Anthony, and you kind of see him going in the direction towards, you know, we know from the TV show.
You see all the characters that you know and love from The Sopranos, and you see them in their younger days. You see all this through with Dickie as your main guy. You see his crew. Obviously, we are introduced to his crew very early on with a lot of scenes with the families together. We see a young Pussy, played by a newcomer. Samson's his first name. I can't remember his last name. And then you see, you know, the young Paulie, played by Billy Magnuson. And you see the normal cast of characters. And Uncle June was another role that was very important. They had to get somebody that could kind of get, you know, Junior's mannerisms and his speech patterns and his look down. And, you know, besides being a little taller than the Uncle June from the show, Corey Stoll came in and I thought he did a really excellent job with the character. He only had a couple lines in the trailer, so I wasn't sure how much they were going to go into how, you know, the essence of Junior. But when Corey Stoll falls down a flight of steps in the film, that's when it's really on. That's like when you're like, damn, that's Junior for sure. That's Junior. Classic Junior line when he falls down the stairs. When it, you know, it messes up his back, and it shows him later in a scene in bed with a girl. And course, his bat goes out when they're trying to have sex, and this all pisses him off. And yeah, it was just great to see those old characters and see them in this time frame in the late '60s and early '70s. Alan Taylor did a great job of directing this film and bringing us back into that time. And during this time, we're in Newark, where Dickie and his family and all his associates were, and where this movie's based, and then how there were riots going on in the late '60s there in Newark. And that leads us to Leslie Odom Jr.'s character, Harold, who has a big role. He's kind of the foil for Dickie in this film. They're working back and forth. At first, they're pretty friendly and able to work together, but by the end of the movie, some things go down and it pits them head to head. So you see kind of that, how that comes to head. And that's the big story. Dickie, this is more Dickie's movie than this is Tony's movie. But that second half of the movie leading into the end, that's when you see Tony, you see Tony going down this road where you're going to see how he eventually goes into being this boss, from being this kid who's relatively still innocent and everything. But this movie shows him start to get that influence from Dickie and go down a dark path.
Yeah, and they even cast his mother, Vera Farmiga, played her, and she did a really great job.
Excellent.
They're saying, yeah, she kind of looks like Carmela, but
yes.
The whole point is Tony marrying his mom.
Right.
But she was a really crazy character in this movie. I thought she did a really great job. Everybody really did, except the young Polly, and young Syl was a little questionable at times. But those are minor complaints for me. Everything else, I was really impressed. I was nervous going into this movie. I thought they're going to fuck it up like they do with, classics. They bring them back 10, 20 years later. Doesn't work, but this movie has the same atmosphere. It's higher production value. They had a bigger budget, you can tell. I thought a lot of the kills in this movie were pretty good. Seeing the wild card Dickie and getting actually a backstory of him and how Christopher came along, and some narration in the film, a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of nods to the TV show. And then also the ending, which was fantastic. I love how they ended the film, going back to the TV show, and what they can do, set it up for maybe a possible TV show back in the day, which we're hoping for. But had a really great time with this. One of my most anticipated films of the year for sure, and I absolutely loved it across the board. Directing, camera work, music, acting, everything was just spot on. Brought me back to the Sopranos and why I loved it in the first place, and I was really impressed. So I'm giving the Many Saints of Newark a 4 out of 5 Tony Soprano hair pieces.
This movie really does feel like a pilot for a future series where we're going to see young Tony come up, and let's hope that happens. David Chase just inked a deal with HBO and Warner's, so we could very well see a prequel series based on the aftermath of this movie. This movie is just fantastic, and it's all about the performances, specifically Dickie Moltisanti, played by Alessandro Nivola. He does a fantastic job in this role. He has the perfect amount of charm and swagger to be this gangster. And you can also understand by the things that are happening in his life, how he ends up going bad when he seems pretty good at the beginning of the film. When you follow him, he just seems like, a guy that's going around collecting money. He's not really the murdering type, but life comes at Dickie Moltisanti through the movie and all these actions and his interactions with Harold. And of course, being a mobster, of course, that life's going to come around and end up bad in the end, which it does. But Alessandro does a fantastic performance in this film. This is really his breakout role. He hasn't got a chance to star before in a film. You can get used to seeing him in films from now on. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a nomination for the acting in this. Great job. Vera Farmiga nails it as Livia. If you remember Livia from the show, she does all the same kind of cadences as Livia. She looks like her. You can imagine her as a younger version, just how she nags at Johnny Boy Soprano. John Bernthal, being Johnny Boy Soprano, does a great job too. There's a great scene in the car, which is a nice Easter egg to the series and a story that's mentioned. There's all these great Sopranos Easter eggs in this movie, and that's what makes it so great for me, and a movie that I'm going to revisit many times. I love this movie. I really did. Was it perfect? No. Is it Goodfellas, Godfather level? No, it's not. But this feels like something that's going to turn into something even more, just like the pilot of The Sopranos turned into the series. It just got better. This is only going to get better. I hope we get to see more from these great characters. Thank you again, David Chase. Finally, you're able to make the movie. Wish you would have been able to direct the film. There were some issues with his and his family with health and stuff, so he wasn't able to do it. So he got Alan Taylor to do it, and I thought Alan Taylor did a fine job. You know, he's had a couple misfires here in his career, but this one worked for me. I was in the movie throughout. Had a great time with it. It was great going back to this world. Can't wait to return. See those young Sopranos boys back in action. Can't wait to see Michael Gandolfini becoming a little gangster himself, seeing how that comes together. I like the timeline in this movie, the setting. I don't really have many complaints. I'm going to give the Many Saints of Newark a 4 out of 5 Silvio Dante hair pieces. Don't forget to follow along with us on our webpage, Cinephellas.com, as well as all our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe on this here YouTube channel. We had a great time watching and reviewing this film and talking about it with you. We could go on and on about The Sopranos forever. And that would be a good idea for a future, episode or even a little review. Go back and watch some of the best episodes of the Sopranos series and come up with our list, and we could talk more about it because I'd love to talk Sopranos with you. Obviously,
we can do it for days.
Yes. So this has been our Many Saints of Newark video review here at Cinephellas.com. We're in the thick of 31 Days of Horror. So stay tuned for many great reviews, especially from horror films and shows that are coming out this month. We are really looking forward to Halloween Kills on the 15th. We're both going to be streaming that on Peacock, and we will be back as soon as possible with that review. Thank you guys for tuning in. And with that, as we like to say here, cheers! Oh!